Welcome. It's man got a dots back with another episode of the Audible. Hope everybody's had a very good start to the week. Hope everybody's had a very good weekend. Hope you were safe and sound and enjoyed yourselves and were able to relax. And we back at it here on Monday. This week we're really going to be focusing in on the NFC North. If you missed any of the earlier episodes or missed your team, go check the playlist, man. Go check out the material. Remember, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. But yes, we're going to be focusing in on the NFC North. This week, next week, we'll be doing the AFC North as the housekeeping stuff. You college football, hey, check out yesterday's episode. Kind of touched on the college football stuff. I'll be looking forward to more content coming out about that as the season kind of goes on. Hey, Dr. Nikki, how you doing? Miss Murph, how you doing? As always. Yes. This week we're going to be focusing in on the NFC North. A very intriguing division. If you've been watching the show, even before I came over here to the corporate space, today's team is a team I was real high on last year. Team didn't make the playoffs, but showed a lot of improvement. And I think this year are in prime position to really kind of take off. And I'm talking about the Detroit Lions. Last year, like I said, that was my dark horse pick to get into the playoffs. Almost did it. Got started a little bit too late. But I showed a lot of improvement, and I'm going to start them off with the breakdown of the NFC North. Now, stay tuned on Thursday when I make my final pick for the division winner. Like I said last week, if you caught those shows, I could see two teams coming out of this division and making it to the playoffs. Now, the question remains, which two teams will it be? It's a lot of intrigue within this division. I know last year Minnesota kind of ran away with it. It wasn't really a division race to say the least, but I think this year is going to be a little bit different. I see Minnesota kind of coming back to the pack, but will they still be ahead of the pack? Well, I don't know. How you doing, Gator Girl? How you doing? Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into it. Like I said, last year I was very high on the Detroit Lions. Some people thought I was crazy. Gator Girl. Some people thought I was crazy for riding so hard for the Detroit Lions. And I don't think people saw what I saw. And as the year kind of went on, after the slow start, people kind of came around to the idea that Detroit has a pretty good team brewing up there. And I think the team, though they made some changes, are in a position to get even better this upcoming season. And as always, when we break down these teams, we have to start with the quarterback position. Jared Goff returns as the starter. Had a very good year last year. I think he surprised a lot of people by how well he played. I know people were not really high on Jared Goff, especially after he got traded from the Rams. Thought he was just a cog in the system. But last year he showed it. Yeah, I'm not going to say he's elite quarterback. I'm not going to put him on tier 1 or a tier 2. But I think Jared Goff played well enough last year to be placed in tier 3 very comfortably. I think you can win with Jared Goff, but you have to have pieces around him. And when you look at the pieces around Jared Goff, I really like what Detroit was able to do. Now, it's a couple positions, couple players we're going to kind of talk about more in detail as we got to do this breakdown of the Detroit Lions today. Miss Murph says Detroit and Minnesota. Might be the conventional wisdom, but I'm looking at Chicago. And it's a big if, but when we talk about the Bears, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I'm looking at Chicago. Chicago is looking real dark, like a dark horse to me. It looked like a dark horse to me. But we'll kind of do a more detailed breakdown when we get down to Chicago Bears later on this week. But yeah, when we talk about the quarterback position, it starts with Jared Goff. Jared Goff played well. Now I think Detroit did well enough in the draft. I think a lot of people, if you weren't really paying attention to the college football season last year, Herndon Hooker, former quarterback for the University of Tennessee, looked very good last year. Ended up getting hurt, kind of derailed the season. Hurt his draft stock, but they was able to draft Herndon Hooker to come in and possibly, because they don't have a long-term commitment to Jared Goff. Now, I think if Jared Goff goes out there and balls like he did last season, Detroit might be inclined to give him a long-term contract, but he still, they still haven't approached him with that kind of big money yet. But bringing in Herndon Hooker was a good look. Allows him to learn behind a pretty good quarterback in a pretty good system that already has young talented players in place that are also brought in some more talented players. When we talk about what they did in the draft, we'll kind of break that down also. But I think bringing in Herndon Hooker to be the number two um, brings a little bit more arm strength than a Jared Goff. Um, Able to move a little bit more outside of the pocket than a Jared Goff, and could possibly be, depending on how the season kind of plays out, could possibly be the alternative going forward. Could be the quarterback of the future. I, for one, would not be mad at it. I think he played well enough last year with Tennessee. Had he not got hurt, I think he would have been drafted a lot higher than he was. I think he could have possibly, if he'd stayed healthy last year, could have possibly been in the conversation for a late first round pick. But hey, it is what it is. Injuries happen, and you have to kind of deal with it. But I like the quarterback room for Detroit. All else fails, the season goes to bust. I mean, you sit Golf, let Herndon go out there, get some reps, get some game time action, and kind of see what you have going next season. Kind of see what you're going next season. And if the season goes horribly bad and this team is potentially close to the top of the draft, I mean, it's the quarterback class coming out next year is going to be very, very, very good. So I mean, Herndon Hooker could be the quarterback of the future, but depending on how the season plays out, you might be looking at Detroit drafting a quarterback going forward. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Jared Goff is going to play well enough this year to kind of keep that job. I think Detroit is going to be really respected when they step out on the field. Because, like I said, I like the pieces that they have. When we look at the wide receiver room, now you do have Amon-Ra St. Brown, a very good number one-ish, kind of a different number one-ish type receiver. You do have Marvin Jones. They brought back long time Detroit line. They brought him back. Pretty good number two. Now, the guy that they want to be the number one receiver, Jameson Williams. If you've been living under the rock, he's been suspended for the first 6 games for gambling. I mean, it's a bit of a thing because he missed a lot of the season last year being hurt. Expectations are real high. Has the makeup, when I'm talking about his skill set, has the makeup to be a number one receiver in this league. So you're gonna have to wait till after the first 6 weeks to kind of see what he looks like in conjunction with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Marvin Jones. I do like Khalif Raymond to play a more of a slot guy. You do have another guy with a little bit of size on the outside, Josh Reynolds. So Detroit has enough weapons on the outside to make teams be respectable of the pass game. The run game is going to be looking a little bit different. Going on DeAndre Swift, who they traded in the offseason, Jamal Williams, who they let go into free agency, and replaced them with kind of similar style running backs. When you look at Jamar Gibbs, he has a skill set of a DeAndre Swift, not necessarily a bruiser type back, former running back for the my team, Roll Tide. But they also brought in David Montgomery, formerly of the Chicago Bears. He brings more of the short yardage, ground and pound type running back. So when you lose Swift, you lose Williams, you think you're losing a lot, and you're losing a lot on the production end as far as like touchdowns and yards and carries and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know if I'd have drafted Jamar Gibbs that high. I think he was drafted a little bit too high for my taste. But I like the combination of him and David Montgomery in that backfield. I think they'll have a respectable run game. Tight end, they brought in rookie Sam Laporta. Don't really know much about the guy. The couple clips that I've seen, game film, he looks like an okay tight end. It's not the tight end that they ended up trading last year to the Minnesota Vikings. TJ Hawkinson is not of that ilk, but I think he can be effective in this offense. I think he'll be able to find out and carve out a spot within this offense. When you look at the offensive line for Detroit, Detroit has spent a lot of draft capital, a lot of money, bulking up the trenches on the offensive side and on the defensive side. But when you look at the offensive line, it's a lot to like. You have probably one of the best centers in the NFL, and Frank Ragnow, have a very good tackle on the left and on the right, and Taylor Decker and Panay Sewell. Jonah Jackson is okay. The other right guard position could be looking at for an upgrade a little bit more down the road. But I like the offensive line. The offensive line is very physical, very good in pass protection, very good in the run game. You saw that with how effective once they got going last year, how the Detroit offense was one of the best in the league coming down the stretch. The defensive side needed a lot of attention, and they put a lot of attention on the defensive side of the ball. I think if the defense is able to step up their play this year, um, Detroit won't be looked at as a fringe playoff team. Detroit could be looked at as in my opinion, if all goes well, is probably top of the second tier of NFC teams. I'm not going to put them in the same category with Philly. I'm not going to put them in the same category with Dallas. Definitely not going to put them in the same category with San Francisco. But I think Detroit, if all goes well, if that defense is able to get step their game up, and I like the pieces that they added on the defensive side of the ball. If they're able to hold their own, be a better complement to the offense, when I think the offense is going to look a lot like they did last season coming down the stretch. One of the better offenses, one of the most efficient offenses in the league. But let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. You have former first round draft pick last year, Aiden Hutchinson, leading that defensive line. I do like the rotation of the edge players. You got him on the left side. You got James Houston on the right. You have the Okoro brothers playing backup. I do like Charles Harris. The production he's able to bring is a situational pass rusher. So you do have a lot of pass rushing potential. We're going to say you have a lot of pass rushing potential on the outside. Questions I may have is maybe the middle. When I'm talking about the defensive tackle position, I mean, I like a couple of pieces. I like Aleem McNeil. I think Levi or Onzarike is a pretty good player. I'm curious to see what Isaiah Buggs looks like in this defense, but I think you should have spent a little bit of money in that aspect and bringing in more of a run stuff. I know Sheldon Rankins was out there on the market. You really pursued him to shore up the run defense. But I mean, it's not like those guys can't play. Like I said, they do have a lot of talent on that defensive line. I think they're gonna be able to generate a pass rush, which will probably help with the run defense if you're able to kind of get after the quarterback and that kind of stuff. The linebacker position, if like I said, it's a lot to like when you look at Detroit position by position. I like Malcolm Rodriguez on the outside, more of a coverage type linebacker. They did draft Jack Campbell, who I like coming out of college. Another kind of a coverage sideline to sidelines players. I like the way that they're building their defense, but they spent a lot of attention and a lot of money in revamping that secondary. Now the secondary was probably, I ain't gonna say probably, was one of the worst secondaries in the NFL last year. Didn't have very good cornerback play. Safety play was okay. They knew it was an area they needed to address. Like I said, they spent a lot of attention and a lot of money on the defensive side of the ball, as far as like the draft picks, guys they brought in for free agency, that kind of stuff. They knew that they needed to put more attention to that. Now I wish they would have put a little bit more attention to the defensive line, because you win in the trenches. You win in the trenches as the season goes on. You have good offensive line play, good defensive line play. Your team tends to be one of the better teams. When you look at the best teams in the league, they typically have pretty good play in the trenches. But I think Detroit, with how the secondary is kind of built, how they revamped it, they got rid of Jeff Okudah. Who else is the Amani Owarie? They got rid of him. And they bring in free agent Cameron Sutton, who's a pretty good cover corner. Emmanuel Mosley. Both of these guys are kind of have size on them, more of a zone, not necessarily a man press type corners, but in this defense, they don't have to be a man press type corners. It's not the kind of defensive scheme that they run in Detroit. If you watch them, the X factor. And I was kind of surprised that they went out and made this move. They brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's kind of a tweener, can play cornerback. You've seen that in his time with the New Orleans Saints, and especially with the Philadelphia Eagles. can play cornerback, um, can play in the box as a safety. I think he is going to be the key piece when we're looking at that back end of the defense. When we're talking about the secondary of the Detroit Lions, you have to kind of. I'm looking at C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They paid a lot of money for him. He played very well in his stops in New Orleans. Played very well in his stops in Philadelphia. I think with his experience back there, because Mosley and Sutton are fairly young at the cornerback position. Now, it's not a lot of bodies back there. I expecting them to probably expand their cornerback and DB room a little bit as the preseason kind of goes on. If you already know preseason has already kind of started. I'm gonna say this. I watch preseason football just for the simple fact that it's football, but I don't take too much from it. I mean, they're not really playing. They're not running the full offense and not running the full defense. It's very vanilla. Um, you might see the starters come out there for maybe a series. Maybe by third game of the preseason, they might be out there for a quarter, maybe a half, depending on the team. But it's not really much to take from the preseason. It's very rare you see a team that looks real good in the preseason, is dominant in the preseason, that translates that into success when the regular season starts. Because, like I said, most of the starters are not playing. Preseason is more of let's call it what it is, more of a glorified tryout. I think the guys, the first 46 already know who they are. They already know their position is solidified. What you seeing with the preseason is those guys fighting for those last 7 spots on the roster, on the active roster anyway. And they're auditioning for other teams. They understand that. So if you play well in the preseason, you may not be kept by the team that you're playing with, but you may get picked up by another team. So what you're really playing for is those 7 positions that are kind of up in there. I think the first 46 positions are kind of locked down for most teams. You know who the starters are. You know who's going to be where when the season starts, barring injury. But the preseason is a time for those kind of young guys, veteran guys, to make a name for themselves, possibly find themselves on an active roster. If not, be on somebody's practice squad. So it's not much. But like I said, I like Detroit. Yes, West Bank. I got Dallas's top tier. I mean, other than Philadelphia, who you can make an argument that Philadelphia is better overall. You can make that argument. You can make an argument that San Francisco is better overall. Outside of them two, who else would you put above the Cowboys? Would you put the Giants above the Cowboys? Probably not. Would you put Minnesota? We'll talk about them later on this week. I think they kind of come back to the pack a little bit. Like, who else I'm not picking any team from the NFC South to be top tier. I mean, if you had to pick 3 teams out of the NFC, those would be the top 3 teams you would probably pick to come out of that conference. With Philly and probably San Francisco leading the way as far as the odds are concerned. But yeah, I got Dallas as top tier. Westbank says Lions should have traded for Lamar. I'm surprised a lot of other teams when he was out there floating around trying to get a contract done. I think that was collusion. And if you watched my early episodes earlier this summer when we were talking about that, when the whole Lamar Jackson saga was going, I think it was just outright collusion. Like, for a guy that this young, a former MVP at his age, with his skill set, I mean, he's a unicorn at the quarterback. For there's just not too many guys that has his athleticism and can be as he can function in the pocket. But for a guy to be out there on the market, nobody wanted to talk to him. It was kind of like hands off. I think that was collusion. I'm glad it worked out in his favor at the end. I'm glad he got paid. But yeah, I thought Detroit was going to be really in the market to kind of swing a deal. The asking price for Lamar was maybe 2 first-round picks guaranteed. You probably talking some second or third round pick thrown up in there. I mean, that's kind of rich for teams that had the cap space to sign him to a long-term deal. So I don't begrudge Detroit, sticking with golf. I mean, they kind of addressed the quarterback position in the draft by drafting Herndon Hooker. Like I said, I think Hooker, given an opportunity, can be a starter in the NFL. I'm not going to put him in the Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrows category just yet. I mean, you got to get out there and prove it on the NFL field. but I think Herndon Hooker could be a serviceable player at the quarterback position. Um, but I like, you start with Jared Goff. You addressed it, just a little bit, and if all else fails, if Detroit falls off the map, Detroit tanks. Detroit turns into the old Lions instead of the Lions that I was looking at last year. I mean, the quarterback class coming out and next year's draft is very, 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 very good. Talking about very good and very deep. You're talking about potentially six guys being looked at as potential first round draft picks in next year's draft for quarterback. So it's going to be talent there. If they need to draft a quarterback that high, it's going to be some talented players there. So I'm not overly upset that they didn't pursue Lamar, but hey, I get it. But so right now, I got Detroit. Clearly, I'm talking about Detroit. I got Detroit being a playoff team. I'm gonna, that's not really a stretch considering how well they played, especially towards the end of the season. Just couldn't get it done. How tiebreakers work and that kind of stuff. But came on too late. I think Detroit comes out with a mindset of being very aggressive out the gate, trying to really build up the capital to where, when you hit those slumps through the season, and every team hits those slumps where they don't look like themselves for a game or two here or there. I think, with the NFC being as weak as it is, I think Detroit could get in, being a 9-win team, maybe a 10-win team in this conference. Now, could that be enough to win a division? I don't know. I do have Detroit kind of penciled in, and I said penciled as being one of my playoff teams for the NFC. I think they can definitely improve upon last season. I'm curious to see what the offense really looks like with the fully healthy Jameson Williamson once he comes back after his suspension. Um, I'm curious to see because, like I said, they have talent. I'm Ross St. Brown. I like him as a receiver. I've always liked Marvin Jones as a number 2 complement receiver. Add Williams to that palette. You have a nice receiving core. Probably one of the best receiving cores in the NFC when you really break it down and look at them on paper. One of the best overall receiving cores in the conference. I do like Gibbs at running back. I'm not sure if he'll be the starter coming out the gate. They may be looking at Montgomery because of the veteran experience. But I do think Gibbs is going to have an opportunity to contribute to this offense very early. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his tires. I can say that about University of Alabama running backs. They don't ground them down, for the most part. Most of these guys have one great year. Then by the time they had that one great year, they're off to the draft. You've seen Alabama running backs be successful when given an opportunity in the NFL, i.e. Derrick Henry. It happens. It happens. I see him. We like I'm part of the part of the organization. But anyway, so yeah, Detroit I got going in 9, maybe 10-win team. I do have Detroit coming in into the playoffs. Now, whether they be the division winners, I'm not sure. There's 2 teams in this division that I will comfortably put into the playoffs, but you can make a case for the 3rd team, and you could really make a case for all of these teams really to get into the playoffs, considering how down the NFC is. I only think 1 team is coming out of the NFC South, maybe 2 teams coming out of the NFC East. I had 2 teams coming out of the NFC East. You could possibly see a couple teams. We'll talk about Green Bay. Green Bay's kind of a question mark. After Aaron Rodgers, what does this team look like? We'll be breaking that down later on this week. Chicago, Chicago is more about the coach. For me, it's going to be about the coaching decisions. What kind of game plan they're willing to run with Justin Fields? Because if they do what they did for a 4 or 5 game stretch there, like they did last season, and allow that young man to kind of get out the pocket and create with his feet, we could be having a very different discussion about Chicago. But that's neither here nor there. We'll talk about that later on this week, man. As always, appreciate everybody for coming out to listen. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. I am uploading a video. I'm trying something here. I am uploading the video later on tonight. I think it comes out at midnight We'll see how it goes. It's one of my first videos that I put up, but I had to kind of do some stuff with it. Y'all know how YouTube is. You know how YouTube is. YouTube won't let a brother be great. YouTube won't let a brother be great. First time I put it out, had about 70K views in a day. Then YouTube said, no, we can't let you eat like that. So I tried some things, and we'll see if they'll let me breathe with it this time. We'll see if they let me breathe with it. Still going to be doing work over here, working on some stuff. Like I said, hopefully by the time the regular season starts, I'll be in a rotation with a regular show, maybe doing it on a Monday or Tuesday to kind of wrap up the weekend's games. Thinking about trying to find a co-host for that show, but it's hard to find people that want to do a show on a weekly basis. I know it can be kind of time consuming for a lot of people, but we'll see. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, YouTube won't let me be great with that. Yes, and I was doing so well, but I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can slide up over here. But YouTube be on me, man. YouTube be on me. You saw that last week, man. YouTube be on me. Can't even play highlights like that. I gotta create videos and but anyway, that's a story for another day. Anyway, like I said, appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, all that good stuff is always appreciated. I don't know if Miss Murph is still listening. I am working on a Twitter. You gotta forgive me. I'll be absent minded and my mind be in other places doing other stuff. But I'm working on kind of putting together a Twitter page, like really expanding my repertoire over here in the corporate space. How you doing, beautiful? It's nice to see you finally called alive. Yeah, this is the corporate space you've heard so much about. This is the quiet space where we talk, over here. This is the corporate space. It's kind of like the honeycomb hideout over here. But yeah, like I said, appreciate all the support. Tomorrow, I forgot who we doing tomorrow. I mean, the lines have been set up. So yeah, same bat time, same bat channel. We'll be back again tomorrow, 8:30. Oh, before I kind of get up out of here, I want to give y'all the kind of breaking news out of the NFL today. Two very big signings. One very near and dear to my heart. Zeke has gotten signed by the New England Patriots. He will be wearing number 15. His number wore at Ohio State. I'm glad Zeke has found him a home. I think then now that doesn't make New England any better of a playoff team. My position on them still stands. If you not understanding what I'm talking about, go check out last week's episode I did on the Patriots. I think Zeke helps the running game, but he doesn't. It doesn't push them ahead of the other three teams in the division. Now, the other big signing of the day, Dalvin Cook signing with the Jets. Potentially for with the incentives involved, potentially $8.6 million. Now that move, if he stays healthy, and he stayed healthy last year, he had off-season surgery on the shoulder. I want to say back in February, but if Dalvin Cook, and you have a combination of Dalvin Cook and maybe a potential of Breece Hall, that 1-2 combination, two very dynamic running backs. Wow, I mean that may change the narrative in New York, but then again, the offensive line is still substandard. Offensive line is still substandard, so it is what it is. Let me kind of get my behind up out of here because I don't do these long shows over here. Like I said, it's always appreciated. We'll be back tomorrow, breaking it down, working on some other stuff. We'll see. We'll see. My mind be all over the place. Give y'all the phrase that pays over here. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but every time you learn. And I'm out.